thank you everyone for being here. I am so excited to be here. So while we were just kind of waiting, I did draw a little I did a playing card divination for us. And I asked my deck of cards, what is something that we could potentially leave behind in order to help hypnosis evolve into the future and make it more accessible? And I got the 9 of spades, which kind of, if you're familiar with tarot or anything like that, relates to a lot of like almost like swords, thought, energy, conscious mind stuff, obstacles, hurdles, making decisions, and making changes. So very often I think a lot of hypnotists overanalyze what we do. And today is really about like going back to a more minimalistic approach, using what's already there, working with attention as it currently lives in 2026 and in the future, so we can serve more potential clients. So anyway, I'll just get started. What I'm going to share with you today is kind of a philosophy of working, like I said, with attention as it actually is today, delivered through really brief, widely accessible hypnotic experiences. So we're going to talk about the state of things now, why I believe this is really important for us now, how you can better serve even more potential clients and make hypnosis appealing to people who maybe wouldn't consider it typically or think that they can't participate in it. And we're also going to have at least one hypnotic experience depending on time. And really, above all, I hope to inspire you with a new way of looking at hypnosis, thinking about hypnosis, and speaking about hypnosis to make it really freaking obvious to even more potential clients that hypnosis is, in fact, something for them, something they should consider, especially neurodivergent clients and much younger people who really need this tool. Because I truly believe hypnosis is a life skill. I believe everyone has the right to this knowledge, and we're all here because we know that hypnosis is awesome, right? We're probably maybe a little bit obsessed. I am. I introduce myself at parties. I catch myself introducing myself as Desmerized with my hypnosis name. It's very silly, but you know, hypnosis is really cool, and we've all had direct experiences probably with hypnosis and what makes it so special. So you might even wonder, why would we adapt it or change like such a good thing? But there are a few reasons that I'm going to get into. In fact, we might actually be pushing potential clients and full generations of clients away from hypnosis by describing it in the ways that we always have been. And not to be dramatic, but all of our future clients are on the line, and all of our future clients are online. And we as hypnotists need to adapt to meet them where they are and start matching the current cultural perceptions. So I'll just introduce myself briefly. I am Desiree. I'm a hypnotist, and I'm also an ICBCH certified hypnosis instructor. And I specialize in teaching evidence-based hypnosis to primarily spiritual practitioners, so kind of the woo, a lot of tarot readers, astrologers. I do have some psychiatrists and neuroscientists in my trainings. But mostly I am teaching hypnosis to people who are already seeing clients in some capacity. They're already in those healing and guidance professions. And I want to give them new ways of kind of supercharging what they do with evidence-based hypnosis. And back in 2021, I started recording a new micro hypnosis track every week because typically under 13 minutes long, that was always my boundary, because I wanted to give the people in my communities a way for hypnosis to fit into their lives despite all of their limiting beliefs and all of their limiting factors. So even if they're working from home and it's pandemic lockdown and they're a single parent and don't have any other time by themselves except for like a couple minutes in the bathroom, I wanted to give them something that they could use to embody hypnosis and actually feel a shift. Give them like a quick win, even if they're busy, even if they think that they can't do hypnosis because they have a short attention span, or they're in chronic pain or hyperactive and they can't sit still. I wanted to give them an opportunity for hypnosis to fit into their life. And that project evolved over the last 5 years into what is now like a membership. I call it my Despensory, where I have hundreds of tracks and people can just start dipping into these little ways to embody hypnosis, start training their nervous system, training their ability to imagine, training their ability to visualize, even training their ability to relax and change their state. and really building that conscious, subconscious, inner communication system within themselves. And it is also being turned into a book and other fun things that I can't even talk about yet. But many of my clients also identify as neurodivergent, and that came about by accident. So we're going to talk more about that as we go. So I'm just going to tell you how we're doing this. I will be intermittently sharing my screen. I'll guide you through at least one experience if we have time, maybe two. I'll ask if you have questions, you can write them down like on a piece of paper and ask them at the end. I'll have designated time for questions, but I won't be looking at the chat during because I want to stay on task and I can go down rabbit holes pretty easily. So yeah. So with that, allow me to share my screen. Okay. Attention has mutated. The pandemic made increased screen time virtually mandatory and also vitally necessary for most of us. And TikTok has virally influenced our perceptions, and we are forever changed. There is no going back. And in this post-2020 landscape, virtually every industry has acknowledged and embraced this shift. Exhibit A, the classic yellow legal pad, now comes in this landscape format with a computer monitor on the cover, offering you the option to now work in computer screen dimensions. Exhibit B, we have a prescription drug commercial for psoriasis medication, and that is showing this person here kind of going through some fun filters to mask their symptoms, and then offers the solution, the magic pill, to live life unfiltered with this beautiful light and this serotonin glow about her. Exhibit 3. We have this car commercial. There's actually several car commercials using this same format. This is a commercial for Auto Trader starring Kenan Thompson. This one's kind of trippy. A lot of these car commercials are shot in the POV perspective. They are kind of showing you all of the likes that you're going to receive when you post new pictures of like the deal you got on social media or the car that you got. And they're future pacing you through this dopamine fueled perspective reality through screens within screens. So in this commercial, there's a girl doing a TikTok video and Kenan interrupts her in front of her nice shiny new car. He's telling you about the amazing deal you can get on Auto Trader. They zoom in on the phone to show that information. And this is a perspective that we're all very familiar with now, that handheld view of receiving information through this little handheld device. And then it zooms out and we have him on a screen, on another screen. It's all very, very interesting. You might even notice TV commercials nowadays are using vertical ratios, even though it's still filmed in a widescreen format. There's even some TV commercials that are using this kind of like the ratios of a TikTok or an Instagram video with dead space on either side, user-generated content, and they're using that to advertise. And you might even notice that out there in the wild. Maybe you'll notice this weekend or later today. There are hands holding phones on packaging of physical products that are being used to relay information about that very product. And neuromarketers are doing this for a reason. And I think it's time for hypnosis to join them in a way, because as hypnotists, we understand that we can speak clearly and directly to our clients' unconscious minds through metaphors. So screens and the phone, these are physical things that we use to communicate with and learn from and connect with each other in a very literal sense. We can hold them in our hands or sit them on our lap or our desks. So that's how all of us are together here right now, right through a screen. And it's also a metaphor to relay information directly to the unconscious mind, bypassing that critical faculty of the mind. So we're now using screens and phones to communicate, even when we're not using screens and phones to communicate. And it is so habitual, this view here is so habitual and comfortable and normal for us that the information just goes right in. So I'd like to collectively now take a moment to express a level of awe at how much hypnosis has actually changed in the last 6 years. So I wonder how many of us practice hypnosis before 2020, if you want to just like raise your hand on screen. Yeah. And then a lot of people, maybe post 2020, maybe it was a pandemic interest. A lot of people got into hypnosis during that time. And whether you practice before the pandemic or after, a lot has gone down in the last 6 years. So I started my hypnosis practice in 2017 in New York City. And as of that time, it was pretty novel for a hypnotist to practice virtually. I knew a few who did. It was kind of mystifying to me, but it was kind of rare. It was more the exception than the rule. And as of March 2020, a lot of us can relate to that scramble where, you know, we all of a sudden had to shift everything onto this platform, Zoom, which I had never used up until that moment, but immediately, right? And maybe you can relate to this. I had to move in-person clients and in-person events to this platform. And my first two Zoom clients in 2020, March of 2020, fell asleep in session with me. So I knew that I had to change the way I was doing hypnosis immediately, because the way that I practice hypnosis in New York City, city of 8 million people, probably one of the top 5 intense places to live in the world, was not working on Zoom so well, right? It's like in my office, what I would do for my clients to kind of, you know, negate the subway ride that they took to get to me, and then preemptively do the same for the one that they would inevitably be taking home. There was a lot of relaxation built into those sessions. My style of hypnosis had to change immediately. So what I noticed was that as the way that I practiced hypnosis changed very drastically, very quickly, the way that I spoke about hypnosis also obviously changed. And then I started posting on social media and getting clients from social media. And then I noticed that my clientele changed very rapidly to primarily much younger people, like 20 years younger than me, who often identify on social media as autistic or having ADHD or somewhere on the spectrum of neurodivergence. And I didn't intend for that to happen, but they found me because I was suddenly somebody who was talking about hypnosis in a way that spoke to them, that made it feel like something they could do, they could participate in and possibly benefit from, even though many of them did have limiting beliefs about hypnosis before. So I believe that, I mean, look around at the world, people need hypnosis now more than they ever did before, especially young people. And awareness and interest is growing. But with the ever dwindling attention span, people feel even further away from being able to participate in hypnosis because of the way that it has been historically presented and described as this state of deep relaxation and heightened focus and heightened suggestibility. So just as we've become acclimated to this level of screen time and the lack of focus that accompanies it, we can start to train our clients' minds to incrementally experience stillness and calm in spite of the screens and in spite of their perceived limits. And then start using those little spaces that we create within their mind and body to carry out purposeful trances that actually benefit them and build onto something much bigger that they can have for life. So I'm going to share my screen again. Sia Keenan. So a while back, I posted a meme on my Instagram story that said this: I miss my pre-internet brain. And one of my hypnosis students replied saying, I don't even have a pre-internet brain. And I was like, oh yeah. Somewhere within me, there is a memory. I'm 45 years old. Somewhere there is a memory, a point of reference of what it's like to stare at the ceiling because there is nothing else to do. And younger people today just don't have that. They don't have that. That is not an accessible resource for them. They don't have that reference point. Me and lots of us, I'm sure, you know, my age and older, we are very well adapted to technology. And yet there is a reference point somewhere back on our timeline that we can access and utilize and build on with hypnosis, of stillness, a memory of just being with ourselves, just being with our mind. So we have digital natives and digital immigrants. These terms were coined by a guy named Mark Prensky to describe the differences in perceptions from two essentially different cultures sharing the same territory. So digital natives grew up having an almost inextricable relationship with tech. When I was in high school, it was the 90s, the internet lived at home, it was wired to the wall. It wasn't, I didn't do much on there. I signed on to AOL as Neon Bunny after school and talked to my friends and went in chat rooms about music that I liked. It couldn't answer my most basic questions, though. It couldn't answer my most burning questions. But when my younger students and clients were in middle school, the internet was already pocket-sized and portable, and with them everywhere they went. They were already fully enmeshed. And it can answer every single question, not always factually, and yet, these are a generation of people, or multiple generations of people, who are of the information age. So they have a lot of knowledge, maybe even arguably too much knowledge, too much information, but they value knowledge. Information is power. And now we have the iPhone babies and iPad babies. So, this is kind of trippy to think about, but the first generation of people who could have been handed an iPhone in infancy, and I know a couple of them, my friends' kids, are as of this year turning 18, 19 years old, turning 19. These are adults. They can vote. They can serve in the military. They are not a generation of children with fractured attention. And in this context, the truth starts to have to be reckoned with, that us digital immigrants, myself included, we are a dying breed. They don't make us anymore. And actually, most people are now digital natives. And you don't need to be a genius to just realize that they're going to keep proliferating. So theirs is the culture that we now inhabit. We occupy their territory. So in this context, then, hypnosis has been developed by a group of people who no longer occupy the social, cultural landscape that we live in. So I argue that in order for hypnosis to survive and thrive into the future and remain a viable, accessible resource for future generations, it needs to adapt to meet the needs and match the perspectives of younger people. And that starts with all of us here today, right now. So to add another dimension to this conversation, I want to talk about digital dementia. Because the way that we make use of our minds has shifted at the most fundamental level. And there is this phenomena called digital dementia. This term was coined by a German neuroscientist in 2012. And it refers to the potential cognitive and neurological deterioration caused by outsourcing our lives to our apps and to devices. When we don't need to remember addresses, phone numbers, directions, birthdays, we are outsourcing our very neurons to our devices. And the brain then doesn't need to generate new neurons or make new neural connections because there's an app for that. So we don't actually know how this is going to play out among future generations, but it is predicted to be something of epidemic proportions. And there is this kind of crass saying, don't shit where you eat or don't shit where you sleep. And I'm sorry to say it, but, what are we doing with our phones, our devices? I mean, quite literally, people do bring them into the bathroom. They do use them to order food at restaurants. Where I live, still, the pandemic kind of created this shift where you have to scan a menu with your phone. They don't even give paper menus out anymore in restaurants in the city. It's interesting, right? We're doing everything on there. We're learning on there. We're at a conference, perhaps on your phone. We're using it to socialize, to date, to read, to understand really stressful news and events that are happening in the world. It's a lot. And this over dependence on screens and the enmeshed relationships that we have with them are precisely one of the reasons why people, especially younger people who know no different, again, they don't have that point of reference, are going to need hypnosis as a tool, and specifically smaller doses of it, to start to adapt to hypnosis and incrementally increase their ability to relax and focus in spite of the screens and the havoc that they're kind of causing in our lives. They're also beautiful and necessary in ways like this, right? So I'm going to stop sharing for a few moments. So this brings us to the title of the talk, this presentation, micro hypnosis, which is a cleaner way of referring to one of my favorite metaphors, which is the microdosing metaphor. I like to think about the cultural attitude shift we have seen in the space of psychedelics, the attitudes towards psychedelics, as a potential metaphor for the future of hypnosis. You know, once upon a time, there was judgment and even punishment cast upon psychedelic substances, but now, thanks to a growing body of research, they are in the process and have been of being destigmatized and legitimized as tools of therapeutic change work. And hypnosis, likewise, I believe, is emerging from the shadows of mistrust and skepticism and starting to be empirically vindicated as the powerful therapeutic tool that it is. So during those post-pandemic years, Andrew Huberman, who's a fan, he became a little bit of a polarizing figure, but love him or hate him, he launched his podcast, Huberman Lab, and he became the gateway drug for neuroscience nerds the world over. And I'm going to share my screen again. It was there on his podcast with huge audience that he gave hypnosis a huge platform by openly singing its praises often, arguably giving it a level of coolness and credibility, and going so far as to call himself repeatedly a raving fan of hypnosis. And he interviewed David Spiegel. So if you're familiar with David Spiegel, he is a second generation hypnotist, psychiatrist, and researcher at Stanford. And his multiple appearances on Andrew Huberman's podcast, then kind of launched him into the wellness bro podcast world with podcasts with huge followings. He was on Rich Roll, he was on Tim Ferriss, Jay Shetty, just to name a few. So awareness is growing, visibility is out there, and I think people are starting to really understand that hypnosis is something they should likely consider or reconsider, as it were. And that's exciting. That's an exciting time to do hypnosis when there's so much awareness about it. But not everyone can get an appointment with David Spiegel, right? And I don't even know if they'd want to. And that's why us kind of updating our language, the way we talk about hypnosis, the way we describe it and practice it, introduce it, are going to be so important. So if you're familiar or not with the world of psychedelics, which I'm just interested in its parallels to hypnosis, I do go to a lot of psychedelic conferences. So Dr. James Fadiman is kind of a legend in the area of psychedelic research. I have a personal connection to him. My writing mentor co-authored a book with him that came out just in last year called, it's called Microdosing, I believe, or it's about microdosing. And he is like the granddaddy of modern psychedelics research. He's still alive. He's almost 90 years old. I see him at conferences in San Francisco. Very cool man. And so I defer to him to kind of, define what is microdosing. So he says, James Fadiman says that microdosing isn't a micro version of a large dose, but it's working on a different principle. That microdosing psychedelics allows people to explore the subtle cumulative effects of really low doses of psychedelics, so low that no substantial alterations of consciousness are experienced. So microdosing isn't really about experiencing profound or trippy effects, but about enhancing one's day-to-day experience of life. And this is the same principle underlying micro hypnosis. Just as microdosing makes these mind-altering substances available to a wider and more diverse range of people and applications, micro hypnosis makes this awesome awareness expanding, brain changing modality and practice available to all despite any limiting factors. And I hope this is obvious, but that is not to say that traditional hypnosis is obsolete. I love hypnosis and I love deep, long trances and somnambulism, but really what it is about creating an accessible entry point. So if you had a brick and mortar office or a storefront, for your hypnosis practice, if you wanted to make it accessible to people with disabilities or to anyone, right? Not just people with disabilities, you would add a ramp at the entrance. So that's kind of how I view what micro hypnosis is. If your clients are here and you don't have that ramp, maybe they can't get up there. Maybe there's some limiting beliefs about that. But if you install that ramp, we're bringing more people to hypnosis. So I just look at it as installing that ramp, letting people get to hypnosis without a barrier of any kind. Because, and again, this can, when I talk about this with other hypnotists, they don't always like it. There's sometimes a little bit of pushback. But what if we take the idea of relaxation off the table when we talk about hypnosis? Not everyone likes that. I get it, because I love the relaxation aspect. But what if hypnosis was a little bit less about relaxation and a little bit more about active, somatic imagination experiences? So several years ago, 2023, I created a survey, and I've been collecting responses over the years. The survey is called Neurodiverse Perceptions of Hypnosis. And initially I gave it out to people in my communities, a lot of my people on Instagram, because that is where I have a lot of people who seem interested in hypnosis, but still wary of hypnosis. And a lot of people who do identify as neurodivergent in some way. And so I really wanted to get in their heads. I wanted to know what about hypnosis turns them on or off. What can I do as a hypnotist to make hypnosis more accessible, more appealing, more exciting for them? So I'm going to share some of the results from that survey verbatim. So I asked this question: is there any specific language or custom related to hypnosis or stereotype of hypnosis that you feel excludes you or is a major turnoff for you? And these are some of my favorite answers. I got just under 100 responses to this, but these echoed the majority. Focus is a bit of a triggering word. As soon as they start going muscle by muscle, my body immediately gets restless and my mind wanders. Visualization, my brain doesn't do that well. That came up a lot. I hate long inductions. I hate slow inductions. Really long inductions with too many deepeners. As someone with ADD, I can get into my inner realms very quickly and easily. Being corralled through a long process is a total turnoff for me. So again, these echoed the majority. Aphantasia came up a lot, people calling it by name. Aphantasia, if you don't know, is the inability to visualize, the lack of a mind's eye. And it's kind of a niche thing, but it's pretty popular on social media. There's tons of TikTok videos about it. So people are aware about it, and then they think that they can't do it. And for some reason, I've discovered over the years, people think visualization is kind of required for hypnosis. So just something to be aware of, right? So coupled with the ever dwindling attention span, people have been trained, younger people have been trained, and so have we all, for instant gratification, right? So relaxation is an important part of hypnosis, and I think it's important in life too, but in micro hypnosis, it's not the goal. It is more of a surprising but welcome side effect, like, oh, what I just did for 10 minutes. I didn't think I could do that, but it wasn't why they went into it, right? And you're building the ability to relax more and more as you microdose hypnosis, as it were. Because somebody who never sits still, they are not ready for deep relaxation. They'll feel like a failure. They'll just not try it again. They'll assume that it's not for them. A lot of people are really put off by it. And I can't tell you how many clients I get that tell me the relief they feel when I tell them that they don't have to relax. So for others, though, just the expectation of relaxation is going to start to stress them out. So they might not even ever try something like hypnosis. So what if we just took that pressure off? Micro hypnosis is about meeting people where they are, regardless of your ability to relax. Even if you have chronic pain and you think that you can't sit still because it's uncomfortable. Those are some of the things that are going to be really important going forward. Another thing that, hypnotists kind of push back against, but what if we just never say the word suggestible again? What if suggestibility wasn't a thing? What if hypnosis was less about suggestibility and more about curiosity, activating a learning state in the brain and nervous system? So I'll have more responses from my survey here. I asked, in your own words, what does it mean to be suggestible? And these are the verbatim responses, some of them. Easily manipulated, submissive, easily influenced. When I hear the word suggestible, I think of the words vulnerable and also gullible. I associate weakness with the word suggestible. The idea of being suggestible implies someone else is in charge of my healing or controlling or manipulating me. I accept suggestions easily, hate it because I want to feel in control of myself, being fed information to get to an end point. So nobody really wants to be highly suggestible anymore. That is not necessarily a compliment. That's maybe what you'd call somebody who has been brainwashed into conspiracy theories. People now, younger people especially, perhaps you've noticed this on social media, people value freedom and autonomy more than ever. Perhaps it's because we are so enmeshed and so inextricably linked on these social platforms. But people value freedom and autonomy more than ever. And it is time, I believe, for hypnosis to stop hiding behind veils, confusion, mystery, somnambulism. I love that stuff. That's why I got into hypnosis, but it doesn't speak to a wide range of people. And I truly believe that hypnosis is a tool. This is one of my definitions of hypnosis. Hypnosis is a tool for experiential autonomy, giving clients a sense of agency and control over their bodies, their perceptions, their life experiences out in the world. And I believe that as hypnotists, we are educators. Whether or not you're actually out there teaching hypnosis, we are teachers for our clients' conscious and subconscious minds. And I believe we are teachers on behalf of hypnosis. And so just to kind of continue on this, autonomy theme, here's one of my desmerisms. My desmerisms are my little hypnotic maxims that help you remember my teaching points. This is how I define hypnosis. It's not a state of deep relaxation or heightened focus. It's not a state where you're more open to suggestion. It is experiential autonomy. It is you taking your control over your experience, you having a say in how you experience life outside of those times when your eyes are closed. That's what hypnosis is. It's people coming into a sovereign trance, not me doing the trance. They're making a decision, an autonomous decision, and they're going to experience changes in their experience of life outside. So, as of the mysterious kind of hypnosis stuff, I love it. I love somnambulism. I love deep, deep trances. Maybe some of us do too. But the problem with those things, especially again for these younger, information hungry people who know too much and make everything almost like too conscious, a lot of educational YouTube and TikTok content out there, when they experience those deep trances, or you try to put them through one of those mysterious process or confusion induction, the mysteries about hypnosis persist because they don't have any agency in that experience. So micro hypnosis, this micro approach, is really just about creative, conscious, subconscious collaboration in real time, giving these quick little wins, these quick little dopamine hits that are kind of that people are wired for nowadays, where every memory, that's another desmerism, every memory of hypnosis becomes a tool for self-hypnosis. So it's really about autonomy overall. So I always tell all of my clients, every memory of hypnosis becomes a tool for self-hypnosis. When we're in a session, whether we're doing a kind of micro approach or a deeper experience, which I do, I'm going to be prompting them, especially when I'm working online, to have a memory, create some memories during that session. I want them awake and aware. Again, this is very different from how I started practicing hypnosis in the beginning, almost 10 years ago, almost. But every memory of hypnosis becomes something that they can use in their lives. And another desmerism. Oh, wait, no, we're going to do one. We're going to use a trance right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to invite you to, we're going to use the screen trance, the phone screen. So if you have a phone, you can do this with us. If you don't want to, that's totally cool too. If you want to come back to it later, you can do that as well. But the phone trance is the most prevalent and familiar trance. So let's go there. Let's utilize that. Microhypnosis is starting with showing people you're already really good at trances. If there's anything that this can teach someone, is that they're really good at going into trance, time distortion, eye fixation, not aware of anything that's happening and just taking stuff in passively. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll invite you to make sure your phone is like in silent or do not disturb if you're going to be doing this with us, and just put it in airplane mode or do not disturb or whatever, and let the screen go black. And again, join this trance experience only if you're able to alter your awareness and focus for a few moments and potentially close your eyes. That's optional. You know what's right for you, right? And you know that hypnosis is an autonomous experience, so you can just do it your way. But once you've done that, you have your phone in hand. If you're doing this with us, I'm just going to invite you to get into your typical everyday phone scrolling posture and position, like you're cruising your calendar or you're looking at the conference calendar on this for this conference, and just let your eyes kind of be fixed on that shiny black screen in your hand. Fix your gaze upon the screen, and maybe you can even notice your own reflection or the reflection of something in the room with you, the lights perhaps. And bring your awareness for a few moments to just the weight of the phone in your hand. As your eyes are fixed on that screen, just noticing its temperature, its texture, the places in which it comes into contact with your grip. And as you bring your awareness to these sensations, and as your eyes perhaps remain fixed on that shiny black screen, just take a moment to consider all of the apps, all of the contacts, the maps, the email, the calendars, all of the notifications coming through, all of the information and activity that happens and is always happening in this relatively tiny space of your own hand. And it is all just too much for a hand to possibly hold. So as you consider this, you might even notice that the phone in that hand is becoming heavier and heavier with the weight of information overload now. Too much to keep up with or keep track of, just overwhelm of information and distraction. And as you acknowledge all of the attention harnessing power that is inherent to this incredible technology, you're now going to command your attention, your trance back from that screen in that hand, just calling it back into your mind. So, with your eyes perhaps still fixed on that screen, just imagine pulling your awareness away from the screen and summoning it all back into your mind, pulling it right through that space between and slightly above your eyes, and just letting your awareness rest here in your mind for a few moments. And you can allow that heavy phone in that heavy hand to just gently descend to a safe place, just putting it aside for now. And once you've done that, I'll invite you to just momentarily close your eyes and bring your awareness into that trancy place inside of your mind. And here, I invite you to set an intention to start thinking about hypnosis in a way that carries us all forward into the future, all of us, your peers, your client, future generations, your hypnosis practice, and hypnosis itself. As you are a change maker and an agent of goodwill on behalf of hypnosis, and you can just take in a nice deep breath and blink your eyes back open to the here and now. Welcome back. And that was your kind of, I call it like your gateway trance. You're opting into your most commonly used trance. That's your first, perhaps, hypnotic microdose if you haven't experienced any of them before. And I call that the iPhone transfer. Love a pun, love a pun. They're good for the brain. Bilateral, you know. We're calling the trance back. And that is something that you can do with your clients. That's a great induction. That's something to teach them. And when we start doing that as a practice, you know, I do that myself. When I find myself on my phone too long, I just be like, hey, hang on a minute. Like, let me call my trance back. So that's something that we can start to educate from, utilizing that everyday trance that everyone has an experience with. Everyone can relate to time distortion on this thing. And eye fixation is a great way to induce hypnosis. So whether that's something you teach as self-hypnosis, teach it as a practice, use it as an induction, that is a great way to start, you know, microdosing hypnosis. And then just like one of my other desmerisms, we all have 2 free self-hypnosis sessions every day. Thanks, Richard. 2 free self-hypnosis sessions every day as long as we're alive. Let's start there. Right? Yeah. So we start with the phone. That's your gateway trance. That's like what makes it really familiar and really somatic for people, can feel that. And what's cool about, you know, that phone exercise we did, you can add all sorts of phenomena into that. We can start, you know, doing some kind of autogenic training with the phone, making the phone get heavier and heavier, or using it as, like, you know, if you like to do those suggestibility tests, or I like to call them imagination games, you know, we can induce temperatures in it. We can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. And it really trips people out. So if you ever do group stuff, make everyone in the group do that as a way at the beginning to get them to all turn their phones off or silence their phones for the event. And then let them all experience the oohs and ahs of what we might do with books and balloons, but with their phone. It really trips people out. And it will get oohs and ahs, and it builds group rapport. It's a great group experience. But as going back to the first and last trance of the day, we have 2 free self-hypnosis sessions every day as long as we're alive. So anything you do in hypnosis, again, becomes a memory for self-hypnosis. So a client feels this moment of relaxation where they realize they could do that, or they experience a color or something else like pleasant, or you revivify a memory, a good resource state, that is now theirs. That's in their hypnotic toolbox, right? So why not practice that? You know, when you wake up in the morning, you have this beautiful little window of time. Start with 30 seconds and, you know, imagine what you're going to be walking into, the situations you're walking into, like in this orb of golden light, you know, or whatever it is, right? Using their two trances, their last trance of the day, that's the hypnagogic state that we pass through as we go to sleep. A lot of my younger clients go to sleep with the phone in their hand, go to sleep sometimes with a vape in their hand. They don't have, again, that point of reference, that point of stillness and being comfortable in their mind. So we can start using that. You know, what if you experiment with that last trance of the day? Another desmerism is don't fall asleep, go to sleep on purpose. So when you go to sleep on purpose, you can actually engage with your last trance of the day. And people do find that it's easier to go to sleep without stimulation than they thought when we give them the tools. So anything that people do in hypnosis with you can become a tool that they can play with. I'm going to put a link in the comments. I have the slides for this available to you. So you'll get an email if you want to just go fill out that form. It's a link, and it's also in the slides. I will just quickly share my screen again. I think you can, I don't know if these are clickable. Oh, there, yeah. Desmerize.com/resources-micro. You can get the slides from this, and I'm also going to send you some other resources. I just didn't get them all there. They'll come tomorrow or something. So go get those slides, and I'd love to take any questions if anybody has some. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And if there's any kind of conversation that we want to have. Tim, hi.
Hi. Thank you for this. You mentioned in the beginning that you had created a lot of these experiences. Are those things you were sharing on social media, or was that you were creating to share with your clients? Just curious where we could see more.
Yeah. So great. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to send you the link because I started creating the micro tracks, 32 of them for free on YouTube. And so that now they're in a dispensary, but, but yeah, I'll send you the free ones on YouTube.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And you can, if you find me on YouTube, they're all on there as a playlist. I'm reading a question in the chat. Imagine, let me see. Was it in a slide? It was in a slide?
No, you just spoke it out.
Okay. I think, definitely imagine. And I think imagination is like the perfect way to describe hypnosis too. Relaxation is kind of a byproduct. I think the first thing that we just want to introduce people to is these like kind of quick wins. I don't recall saying 3 things, but if they come to me, I'll.
It started with training their ability to, and then you went ahead.
Training their ability to relax. Yeah. Okay. To relax, to visualize, to even visualize. Again, because that word visualize, and if there is one thing I've learned is we don't say that as hypnotists. It really takes people out of it sometimes. I used to think I couldn't visualize actually. And I started just playing with hypnosis, and I can, people can get there. Remembering dreams. I talk on dreams a lot. Dreams people can relate to. Everyone with a working brain has some memory of a dream at some point in their life. And that's a great way to also kind of bring them into that hypnotic frame of mind. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions before we go?
Round of applause for Desiree.
Thank you, Richard.